Hey everyone, Ikundayo here, and welcome to this high-level security explainer. Today, I'm stepping in as your lead consultant for a really critical situational briefing. We're zeroing in on the Western Nigeria Security Network, what we all know as Amotekun. Now, formed back in 2020 by the 6 Southwest governors, this corp was supposed to be the ultimate answer to the massive security voids in our forests and rural highways. But, 6 years down the line, the system is under immense strain. So we aren't just doing a news recap today. We're actually going to break down the hard operational, logistical, and legal realities on the ground and map out a viable path to true regional stability.
Listen to this incredibly stark warning from Dr. Tola Winjobi, the National Coordinator of Fair Action Nigeria. It just perfectly captures the massive disconnect between the hype of Amotekun's launch and the literal life-or-death struggles they're facing right now. When this started, we all celebrated the idea of local operatives, guys who actually know the terrain, the culture, the language, stepping up to protect their own communities, right? But the data is showing us a harsh truth. Courage, without the actual capacity to fight, is a massive vulnerability.
Okay, let's dive into this. We've got a lot of ground to cover, so here is our roadmap for the briefing. First, the threat landscape. Second, tech gaps. Third, legal shackles. Fourth, politics and trust. Fifth, unified strategy. And finally, implementation.
Ikundayo here, kicking things off with Step 1, the security threat landscape. The reality on the ground has not stabilized. It's rapidly evolving. The threat landscape is undeniably worsening across the Southwest, especially in states like Oyo, Ekiti, and Ondo. We've recently seen some incredibly brazen incidents. I'm talking about the abduction of school children and teachers in Oyo, and high-profile targets getting kidnapped right in Ibadan, like the sister of former Minister of Power, Adebayo Adebalu. And it's not just hitting urban or suburban zones. Over in Ondo State, traditional rulers are reporting that farmers are literally abandoning their cocoa plantations entirely out of fear. So, what's the real takeaway here? This is no longer just a localized security issue. It is a profound economic and social crisis that's actively threatening the region's agricultural output and everyday way of life.
Moving right along with me, Ikundayo, let's diagnose Step 2, logistical and technical gaps. You know the old saying that an army marches on its stomach? Well, a modern security force survives on its logistics. And right now, the Corps is facing some absolutely crippling hurdles. A huge chunk of the patrol vehicles originally bought by state governments are currently unserviceable. Throw in skyrocketing fuel costs and their mobility is just drastically slashed. On top of that, these operatives are routinely sent into deep, heavily forested terrains where the roads are practically non-existent and the telecom networks are totally dead. Think about that. If a rural community is attacked, operatives literally cannot get there in time and they can't even get a signal to call for backup.
Now, what's really wild about this is the fatal blind spot it creates. Most kidnappings, bandit raids, all these violent attacks, they happen under the cover of darkness. Yet Amotekun is operating almost completely without nighttime surveillance capabilities. No night vision goggles, no thermal cameras, no drones. It means the second the sun goes down, these guys are fighting blind. Bringing in this advanced tech wouldn't just be a nice upgrade. It's a massive force multiplier. It would allow a much smaller team to secure a way larger stretch of forest, simply because they could actually see what's out there.
And that brings us to a really critical turning point. Ikundayo here, taking us into Step 3, legal shackles on firepower.
Guys, you absolutely cannot police a 21st century criminal syndicate with 19th century weapons. It's just reality. Right now, thanks to federal laws, Amotekun operatives are legally restricted to non-prohibited weapons. So, out on the field, they're often carrying traditional Dane guns or basic pump-action shotguns. Now, contrast that with the terrorists and bandits they're hunting down, who are actively running around with automatic AK-47s and military-grade hardware. This legal disparity puts our local operatives at an immediate, deadly disadvantage the literal second a firefight kicks off.
Professor Oludeo Tade, a prominent criminologist at the University of Ibadan, hit the nail on the head here. These legal shackles absolutely must be removed. State governors can't just executive order their way out of this. There needs to be an aggressive push for federal clearance to let Amotekun carry standard, modern firearms. If we are asking them to be the frontline defense against highly funded, heavily armed criminal enterprises, they need operational parity. Until the legislation catches up with the actual reality on the ground, the Corps is just going to keep being outgunned.
Let's shift gears to the human element. Ikundayo again, transitioning us to Step 4, politics, trust, and recruitment.
We need to look at this neutrally, but we can't ignore it.
This is a stark allegation from Amitolu Shitu, the pioneer field commander of Osan Amotekun. He's warning that political interference is rotting the cores from the inside out. There are serious allegations that some politicians treat Amotekun like a political tool rather than a professional security agency. When you let political patronage drive your recruitment, you risk letting in unqualified people, or even worse, individuals with actual criminal backgrounds. And that doesn't just ruin professionalism, it completely destroys the public trust that Amotekun relies on for community intelligence.
So how do we actually fix this? Here is the strategy to rebuild those ranks. Number 1, recruitment has got to be totally decoupled from politics. We need rigorous, independent personnel vetting. 2, we have to lean on traditional rulers. Monarchs like the Oba Ejijimi Adu Alagbado of Ikarara Akiti have made it clear community intelligence is everything. The locals know the forest paths, they know when strangers show up. And finally, operative welfare has to be a priority. Ondo State, under Governor Ayedarawa, is actually making real strides here by setting up healthcare and pensions. Because honestly, you can't expect someone to take a bullet for their community if they know their family isn't protected if the worst happens.
All right, let's talk about the macro-level structural fix. I'm Ikandayo, stepping into Phase 5, Unified Intelligence Sharing Network.
The biggest operational flaw in the system right now is fragmentation. Amotekun exists in all 6 Southwest states, sure, but they mostly operate completely independently. The Dawn Commission, the development agenda for Western Nigeria, has been pushing for a unified regional architecture for a while now. We desperately need coordinated, centralized intelligence sharing and seamless cross-border operations. Why? Because criminals simply do not care about state lines.
This captures the whole problem perfectly. If Oyo State suddenly cracks down hard on its forests, the bandits don't just give up. They pack up and move right across the border to a softer, less policed area. Professor Tadame makes such a great point about this. Deploying 100 forest guards in one state is totally useless if the neighboring state leaves its back door wide open. Security in the Southwest is an ecosystem. It's going to succeed or fail entirely based on regional cooperation.
We are in the home stretch now. Ikandayo here, initiating our final phase, Step 6, Implementation Roadmap. Let's move to how this all builds into a viable roadmap for reform. First up, months 1 through 3. State governments need to urgently unlock funding just to repair those broken-down vehicles and subsidize fuel. We have to restore baseline mobility immediately. Then, months 4 to 6, the focus has to shift to procurement. We need to buy those thermal cameras and night vision goggles to take back the night. Months 7 to 12, that's all about aggressive, coordinated lobbying at the federal level to strip away those legal shackles and get authorization for standard firearms. Finally, by year 2, the region needs to formally launch that unified intelligence network, plugging all 6 state commands into one seamless cross-border grid.
Look, the data shows us exactly what is broken here, and the experts have literally handed us the blueprint to fix it. The capacity, the personnel, the grassroots support, it's all sitting right there, waiting to be properly mobilized. But it all comes down to this one question. Will regional leaders and federal lawmakers actually make the hard, politically courageous choices to truly empower Amotekun? Or will bureaucratic shackles, lack of funding, and petty politics ultimately leave the Southwest defenseless? Think about what's really at stake for the region's future here. Thank you so much for joining me at Ikandayo for this critical security explainer. Keep asking the hard questions and keep seeking the facts.